I've actually always hated running. I can remember as a kid I used to live in fear of the annual cross-country events. I can remember like faking injuries to get out of races and having to run at school. I can remember on school camps and things like that, I'd always been amongst the last group of kids to arrive back, and I loathed it. I knew some people enjoyed it, and I could never see what they saw in it. I could never understand how you could find it enjoyable. And yet in 2 weeks' time, I'm actually going to be running my first ever marathon. And so I thought I'd just take you through a couple of steps that I've gone through to go from someone who actually hated running to now being someone who's actually willing to do a marathon and is actually kind of looking forward to it. One of the biggest things I did was to listen to music. For me, whenever I ran, there was just this internal dialogue of, I hate this, why are we doing it? I hate this, why are we doing it? I hate this, why are we doing it? And so I figured there were sort of three choices. I could either start to enjoy running, I could develop mental toughness and just block out that sound, or I could plug in some headphones and block out that sound. A and B sound very hard, so I went for C. And that difference it made was enormous. Just having something else that I could focus on and something that could sort of transport me and take me away during those tough times, I found really good. Having training programs that are built around music, like Craig Mottram did one through Nike Plus, and that was fantastic. I could sit there, listen to music tailored to the pace I was meant to be running, and it got me going. And in the tough times, you can plug in a power song and hit that, and so Queens of the Stone Age would come on. And it made a massive difference, and it was probably the turning point for me in terms of going from something I hated doing to something I was able to tolerate. Obviously, I know a lot of coaches just say that they never have as many injuries with their clients who don't listen to headphones as those that do, and that those that do tend to trip over or stumble or lose their equilibrium, and I can imagine that may well be true. I just haven't had those issues. And also, obviously, if you're running anywhere near the road with headphones on, you've just got to be super aware. If you're running on a bike path with people on bikes or everything else, you've got to be super aware, check your surroundings to make sure that you're not stepping out in front of a car or a bike or anything like that. But for me, the overall process, just having that, whether it's a podcast, whether it's music, whatever it is, to tide you over and get you through, has been a massive, massive deciding factor for me to actually start enjoying the process of running. The other thing I've done, and this was definitely at the behest of my coach, not something that I came up with, is adopting the idea where you take 180 and you subtract your age from it, and that becomes your target heart rate or your target BPM. So for example, for me, it's 155. 150. Okay, it's about 142, but I'm rounding it up to 145, and we're just going to sit with that. And the idea is basically that's the tipping point between when you're going aerobic and when you're going into your anaerobic system. So as long as you can stay within that aerobic range, you're not going to be sort of generating lactic acid and fatiguing yourself and wearing yourself out. And so for me, it's worked remarkably well. It was really hard at the start because to get your heart rate right down to that sort of 145 rate for me meant I had to walk sections, had to slow right down, and so I was running at a very, very slow pace. A real sobering moment was having a 5-year-old girl on a scooter zoom past me at one stage, and that made me realise just how slow I was going. But the longer I did it, I was able to build up my pace gradually while still keeping the heart rate down. I used to come back from a run and I'd just be bright red and dripping sweat and feeling absolutely shattered and had nothing left. Whereas now I can go for the same run or run a lot longer distances and not really feel all that tired at the end, still arrive, not sweating, not glowing red, and ready to run again the next day. So that has been absolutely fantastic. I think if you're a good runner, you may know about this already, or you may have the physique or the conditioning that you don't need it. But if you're someone who doesn't particularly enjoy running, or if you're just getting into it now, it's a really good way to start. If you can get into that habit of sort of trying to hit that goal heart rate, I think you'll find that your running is a lot easier and that you can go for a lot longer. The third tip I would give, and this is more a tip of what not to do, is if you could avoid it, try not to see what you look like when you run. I've never really obviously done a whole lot of running, and so the only running I'd ever seen was sort of the Kenyans and the Ethiopians in the marathon. And so when I ran, I just assumed that's what I looked like, some sort of fluid gazelle bouncing along and effortlessly running. And I remember seeing a video of me when I know I was going flat out. I thought I was racing like the wind. And when I saw the footage, it looked like It looked like I was the love child of a Tyrannosaurus and Monty Burns from The Simpsons. It looked terrible. I looked incredibly slow, and it was just horrifically demeaning. So unless you're going to get a whole lot of used video to actually enhance your technique, I would advise just pretend it never happened and just imagine that you do look just like one of those Kenyan or Ethiopian runners. And look, they're just some really basic tips that I've taken on board that have really helped me. I have no idea if they're going to help you, but for me they've actually made a big difference. And as I said, I've got a marathon coming up, so it'll be the first time I've ever run that distance. I did my first 30k run about 2 weeks ago, and that seemed to go all right. So it's going to be really interesting. I'll let you know how I travel. If you read about it in the news, assume it went pretty badly. But otherwise, if you're someone who has never enjoyed running and has never understood the appeal, give it a go. Don't go into it too hard. Don't go into it to race other people. Just go into it to find your own rhythm and your own sort of cadence. And I promise you, all those stories you heard about people actually enjoying running, it is actually possible.